If I asked you what the biggest mystery in history is, chances are you'd probably say something like who shot Lincoln's assassin, John Wilkes Booth, or what happened to Malaysia Airlines Flight 300. But trust me when I say that there is one mystery that looms so large over the past of our species that all others simply pale in comparison. It's a mystery that stretches back more than 300,000 years. And it's a mystery that mainstream archaeologists are officially admitting they may have finally solved. I'm talking about none other than the mystery of the Sphinx. Specifically, we're going to be exploring a new theory that explains how this gigantic structure was built. And if true, it could completely change our understanding of ancient Egyptian society. Before we get into it though, make sure you hit that subscribe button. As with all my videos, I don't really do sponsorships or paid ads. I just ask that you support the channel by supporting the channel. If you do, be sure to hit that bell icon so you never miss an upload. So, here's everything you need to know about the latest news coming out of Egypt. The discovery was made by researchers from the University of Vienna and the Austrian Academy of Sciences. Like many other experts before them, they were baffled by two things. First, we know that the Sphinx was built around the year 2050 BC during the reign of Pharaoh Khafre. We also know that it was constructed during the 4th dynasty of the Old Kingdom period. What baffles researchers is how such a monumental structure could have been completed in such a short amount of time. That's because the Old Kingdom ended only a few decades later in 2181 BC, so we're talking about a span of just 70 years for the construction of not just the Sphinx, but all the pyramids too. The second thing that has always been a bit of an enigma is how exactly the Sphinx was built. We know that the ancient Egyptians had some pretty advanced engineering techniques for their time. The pyramids themselves are a testament to that, but we've never been quite sure how they constructed such large-scale projects with such primitive tools. Now, for some background on the actual monument itself, the Great Sphinx of Giza stands at approximately 72 meters long and 20 meters high. Its body is that of a lion, which was the symbol of strength and power in ancient Egypt, and the head of a pharaoh. This particular Sphinx depicts the aforementioned Pharaoh. Only 3 Sphinx are known to exist today, but thousands of smaller ones have been discovered throughout Egypt. Of course, it's worth mentioning that this isn't the only theory to explain how the Sphinx was built. In fact, there are 3 main theories, and each of them has its own merits. The first theory suggests that the Sphinx was quarried and transported in the traditional manner, meaning that its body was made from limestone that was cut and then moved to its final resting place. Now, this is obviously quite labor-intensive and would require a massive workforce. The second theory proposes that the body of the Sphinx was formed by pouring molten metal into a mold. Proponents of this theory believe that once the metal had hardened, it was smoothed out and shaped into the form of a lion. While this sounds cool, it doesn't really hold up to much scrutiny. For starters, the density of the Sphinx suggests that its body is mostly composed of limestone. Second, we've never really found any evidence of metalworking on this scale in ancient Egypt. They knew how to work with bronze and gold, but that was mainly for creating intricate pieces of art or weapons. Pouring molten metal into a mold would have been quite a departure from this, and it is unlikely that they would have had the technology needed to pull it off. That brings us to the third theory, one that until now hasn't really been taken seriously by mainstream archaeologists. This theory, as crazy as it may sound, suggests that the Sphinx wasn't built at all. Instead, it grew. You heard that right. Some researchers believe that the Sphinx began as a small hillock that eventually grew into the gargantuan structure we see today. They say that the ancient Egyptians somehow coaxed the earth itself into forming the body of a lion and then carved the head of the pharaoh into the rock. Now, I know what you're thinking. Doesn't that kind of defeat the whole purpose of building a monument? I mean, if it just grows on its own, then what's the point of spending all those years constructing it? Well, according to Dr. Joe Seiss, an American geologist who first proposed this idea in 1987, the answer is erosion. Seiss believes that the Sphinx was originally covered in a protective layer of limestone that acted as a shield against the elements. However, this limestone was stripped away over the centuries, leaving the statue vulnerable to wind and water erosion. As the limestone was eroded, the Sphinx grew larger and larger until it reached its current size. In fact, he believes that the Sphinx is still growing today. albeit at a snail's pace. He even claims that by studying the patterns of erosion on the monument, we can actually determine how fast it's growing. According to his calculations, the Sphinx is currently growing at a rate of about 1 millimeter per year. Now, you might be wondering why the scientists from the University of Vienna are suddenly talking about this long discredited theory. Well, that's because they believe they have discovered new evidence that supports it. What's even more interesting is that they claim the opposite is also true. In other words, they believe that the Sphinx may have lost size as well. This idea is supported by several factors. For starters, we have satellite images showing that the Sphinx's nose was broken off. Sometime before 1361 AD, there are also numerous reports from early European explorers who claim that the Sphinx used to have a nose. These reports, however, predate the satellite images, meaning that the nose could have been broken off hundreds of years earlier. But that's not all. Researchers have also discovered evidence that the paws of the Sphinx were also damaged. This is visible in aerial photographs. But again, it was early explorers who first reported this damage. They claim that the paws used to look like paws, whereas now they more closely resemble rectangles. What does all this mean for our understanding of the Sphinx? Well, if the researchers are right, then it means that the entire monument has shrunk by about 7 meters on each side. This is a significant amount of erosion that has occurred within the last few hundred years. In fact, it's enough to suggest that the Sphinx may be eroding at an accelerated rate. The researchers from the University of Vienna are taking this idea a step further. They claim that the rapid erosion of the Sphinx is due to human activity. Specifically, they blame the construction of a nearby resort. According to one of the researchers, this is causing water to pool near the base of the Sphinx, which in turn is accelerating its erosion. Whether or not this is true remains to be seen. But one thing is for sure. The team from the University of Vienna has reignited the debate surrounding the origins of the Sphinx. By combining modern science with ancient texts and satellite imagery, they have managed to piece together a timeline of events that explains how the Sphinx got to where it is today. Of course, their theory is still just that, a theory. More research needs to be done before we can say for sure whether or not the Sphinx was once taller and wider than it is today. However, if future studies do validate their findings, then it could force a major paradigm shift in our understanding of ancient Egyptian culture. After all, the implications of this discovery go far beyond the tourism industry. If it turns out that the Sphinx was able to grow on its own, then it suggests that the Egyptians had a much greater understanding of geology and engineering than we previously thought. It also raises the possibility that there may be other monuments scattered throughout Egypt that we've simply written off as natural formations. Whatever the case may be, one thing is certain. The mystery of the Sphinx continues to captivate our imaginations. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out my last video on the shocking secret behind the Great Pyramid of Giza.